Cruz and Jolie. Narc psychopaths combine. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. I have explained on other occasions what happens when two narcissists come together, and they often come together. They can come together in a romantic relationship. They might come together in a friendship. They might function within a family. For instance, my own family has plenty of narcissists within it who regularly end up interacting with one another. There might be instances where two narcissists come across one another in a business or social setting, and the outcome is either collision or cementation. Now, the collision may not be apparent straight away. It may come further down the line. For instance, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez are a good example of what happens when two narcissists collide. It's all hunky-dory to begin with, and then the cracks start to show. You can watch my videos about the two of them to learn more about that. But what about the situation when you've got two big hitters who purportedly are coming together? That you have two narcissistic psychopaths who are both middle-greater elites, as Tom Cruise and Angelina Jolie are. What happens there? Well, according to an article in that bastion of journalistic excellence, Heat magazine, these two may well be coming together romantically. Let's find out the substance of that first. On the face of it, they may not be the most obvious of love matches. After all, he's an operating Thetan level 8, that is, Scientology's highest rank, who leads a life of showbiz excess and, when the occasion calls for it, death-defying PR stunts, which, of course, he's able to do because of his psychopathy, and the reaction he gets to them feeds his narcissism. Meanwhile, she's a former Hollywood bad girl who now prefers to keep things low-key, focusing on humanitarian projects and raising her brood away from the public eye, although, of course, she's currently battling it out with Brad Pitt in the court in relation to some litigation. However, when you get down to brass tacks, Tom Cruise, 61, and Angelina Jolie, 48, may be far better suited than you'd first think. They've both totted up 3 failed marriages apiece, unsurprising in relation to the fact that they're both narcissistic psychopaths and have disengaged from people, and have gone to war with embittered exes in the process. Again, the necessity of the assertion of control. They've both become parents biologically and via adoption, and they've both hurled themselves out of buildings in action-packed movies. Thrill seekers, alleviation of boredom, absence of fear. Before Angelina Jolie played CIA agent Evelyn Salt in the 2010 film Salt, the role was even offered to Tom Cruise. Evidently, they're both thrill-seeking, million-dollar-making badass movie stars, Heat explains, with decades of experience in the industry. And while on the face of it they operate in different spheres, and when it comes to Scientology, practically different planets, they do say that opposites attract. Well, in actual fact, it's nothing to do with opposites attracting, because they are similar. They're both narcissistic psychopaths, and they both belong to the sub-school of middle-greater elite. The elite being that they have both somatic and cerebral traits. Being middle-greater means they're both aware of what they are, and they're the more outgoing of the greaters. Generally speaking, when it comes to the aware narcissists that are amongst the greater narcissists, you have lower greater, who often occupy the ranks of politicians and military and business. They tend to be the iron fist in the velvet glove, effective, like to court a degree of fame or infamy, which of course provides them with fuel, but their machinations are linked to taking over countries, to dominating countries economically, to carving a path for themselves politically. With the upper greater, those are the eminence greases, often people you will never have heard of, who are very much the string pullers, who walk between the corridors of power, orchestrating the outcomes of wars, of famines, etc. Individuals who have considerable reach, although they could walk past you in the street and you'd have no idea who they were. The middle graders are the ones that you're most familiar with amongst the famous. This is where the entertainers, the pop stars, the footballers, the actors and the actresses, the rock stars, can be found that are of that ilk. They court fame. It feeds them in terms of the fuel, and they are more outgoing, often portraying themselves in a philanthropic mode also. Something which accords naturally with Angelina Jolie and to an extent with Tom Cruise. Thus, to suggest that opposites attract isn't accurate. In actual fact, they're pretty similar. According to insiders, Tom Cruise is adamant that Angelina may just be his perfect match. And while she might have dismissed his advances in the past, she's now not totally ruling it out. The fact that he's in a long-running feud with her ex, Brad Pitt, makes the idea just that much sweeter. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, of course. The notion that Tom and Angelina would get together romantically might sound a little bit out there to some people, but it really wouldn't surprise a lot of their mutual friends, says an insider close to the Top Gun actor, who split from his most recent girlfriend, Russian socialite Elsa Karyowa, last month after less than a year together. Disengagement. And lately, she seemed a lot more open to getting to know him socially too. This is talking about Jolie. He raves about her intellect, flattery, and what a strong and impressive woman she is. Flattery. He loves that she's never really conformed with the Hollywood BS and has found a way to carve her own niche. Plus, they're both such superstars. Only a handful of people can truly understand the life they live. Or, in other words, they both know what they are and they recognise what the other is, and therefore they can accommodate that. Despite his failed former marriages to Mimi Rogers, Nicole Kidman and Katie Holmes, plus high-profile relationships with the likes of Cher and Penelope Cruz, Tom has apparently never lost his faith in love. Well, that's, of course, the image that he portrays. Indeed, he'd reportedly been on a mission to find his everlasting special someone ever since splitting from Katie in 2012. Meanwhile, mum of 6 Angelina, who was also previously married to Johnny Lee Miller and Billy Bob Thornton, has been demonstrably averse to dating ever again since her 10-year relationship with Brad Pitt crashed and burned in 2016. The two have been locked in a bitter war over custody and assets ever since. See my series about Angelina Jolie for more in relation to that. Last year, Ange, who was famous for her wild past before she became a mum, said in an interview that she was in transition as a person, adding, "I don't feel like I've been myself for a decade." However, as her children are now getting older and more independent, insiders say she's ready to embrace the next stage of her life, and, for the first time in a long time, that might include letting love back in. We're told that Tom is biding his time and treading lightly nearby, ready to make his move. So far, he's keeping things friendly and professional, our source reveals. His goal right now is to convince her to work with him. Then he'll romance her. He's being careful not to come on too strong, because he doesn't want to spook her. Time will tell if he can take things out of the friend zone, but that is very much his goal, and a lot of people think he'll make it happen eventually. While the pair have yet to work together, they've found some common ground in recent months thanks to Angelina's new project, a musical version of The Outsiders. The actress is currently producing the Broadway show, which is an adaptation of the 1983 film that made Tom famous, meaning they have a lot to discuss when they do get together. We're told that Tom reached out to Ange to offer her any help that he could with the show, and she was very receptive. Now Tom is convinced that this could be a really good time for them to take their friendship to the next level. As for their differing views on religion, our source tells us that while Tom has been insistent on his partner's involvement with Scientology in the past, he's not been quite so evangelical this time around. In other words, he recognises that he wouldn't be able to force Angelina Jolie to bend to his will in that regard. But he recognises, of course, that there are considerable other benefits with the two of them getting together. Thus, Heat magazine suggests that it's a bit of a slowly catchy monkey scenario, but that the worlds of Cruz and Jolie may well combine. This wouldn't be a collision, but rather both parties knowing what they are and recognising what the other is, would willingly see the opportunities of the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. The fact is, both are successful, both are wealthy, both are well known, and therefore there wouldn't be the envy aspect that might occur within a less balanced relationship. Furthermore, they are both capable of dealing with other projects, which means that their orbits, whilst intersecting, wouldn't be locked in together, which is likely to result in a greater degree of success because they're less likely to clash. Indeed, they will both recognise the benefit to them in terms of facade management of uniting their relevant houses, but doing so in a manner which still enables them the freedom to do what the other one wants. There are, of course, rumours about Cruz in relation to certain choices that he makes. He has been criticised for having nothing to do with his daughter Suri for a number of years. Those are matters that aren't going to concern Angelina Jolie. Anybody else would be perturbed by those facts, but not her. In actual fact, she, amongst any classification of person, would actually be better placed to handle it. By understanding what he is and recognising that he's similar to her, and both being able to do what they want to do, that they're not going to be in one another's pockets. There's not going to be any sensation of imbalance in the relationship, but rather they would come together and there would be cementation. That they would recognise that by bringing what they both have together, the ultimate outcome of that would be immense and would be even greater and more amplified than what they have on their own. It wouldn't just double up, it would quadruple up with regard to reach and status, etc. They would also find it entertaining. Remember, that's something that they would seek as both being thrill seekers, that they would find it entertaining for the world to look on their relationship as they come together as perhaps being seen as unlikely. They would, of course, be able to direct their Machiavellian minds elsewhere, not necessarily as against one another. There would in effect almost be an understanding between two greaters of this nature, whereby there's no need to play the games with one another, but rather let us combine and play the games with the world. That grandiosity, that colossus striding nature of these two individuals is far more likely. That rather than play games with one another, which actually ultimately would be pointless because they can both see through it, it's a case of why don't we combine our talents and puppet the world? That is far more appealing to them than playing with one another. And that ultimately is what would be behind this move of two narcissistic psychopaths coming together. The ability to orchestrate things around the world. Not in the sense of the way that upper graders do, but for them to be seen in a way, for them to be worshipped, for them to have influence, and that the two of them coming together will increase and amplify that nature of the influence. So it remains to be seen whether it actually occurs. It seems that it's in its embryonic stages, but it's certainly something that hasn't been ruled out. And certainly, given the nature of what they are, the cementation that will occur between them is something that's likely to be appealing to both of them. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.